Hi there, welcome to my Sit and Go video. My name is Rick Brady and I'll be your host for the Secrets of Winning Sit and Go Tournaments on video. This video is intended for beginners to intermediate players of Texas Hold'em poker and those who are interested in profiting and winning at Sit and Go tournaments. More advanced players may also find a few tips and techniques that may be of interest. So, a little bit about this video. The video is really going to focus on foundational strategies and elements that you need to be familiar with in order to win Sit and Go tournaments. In case you're not sure what a Sit and Go tournament is, it's basically like being at the final table in a Texas Hold'em poker tournament. And we start off on the final table in like a single table or even a multi-table, 2 or 3 table tournament. And the goal is to get down into that final 2 or 3 or 4 and to end up in the money. Of course, the ultimate goal is to win the tournament. We're going to see actual tournament scenarios here where we're playing in Sit and Go tournaments so we can see the exact action that's happening, and I'll be making comments as we go through and we look at what's occurring in the game and how we should be thinking and reacting to the situations that occur. I'm also going to talk about the X Factor method that I developed as a system that makes it simpler for players playing in Sit and Go tournaments to properly manage their chip stacks and react properly in the different kinds of situations you'll find yourself in. And finally, we'll see some useful tools and websites that I've prepared for you that will also help you with your game and to boost your skills. So this is a first in a series of these how-to videos that I will be going into various aspects of Texas Hold'em and Sit and Go tournaments, regular tournaments, and ultimately as well as cash games. This video is brought to you by my Secrets of Winning Sit and Go Tournaments ebook. Incidentally, you may or may not be familiar with my product that I released originally in 2004 called Poker Sidekick. Poker Sidekick, if you're a beginner new to the game, actually will teach you the starting hands. It will teach you strategy, basic elements of how to play the game, and teach you the odds of the game and things that you really need to know to properly approach the Texas Hold'em game. What it does is it monitors your play online in real time, and it gives you this kind of feedback as a poker odds calculator and an expert system and consultant right there on the screen with you. So if you're at the beginner intermediate level and you haven't seen Poker Sidekick, I'd recommend that you have a look at that at royalflushclub.com. My Sit and Go Secrets ebook is used by thousands of people worldwide today to win and profit from Sit and Go tournaments. And parts of this video will be based on the ebook, but the ebook goes into lots of detail that we won't have time to cover here today. So if you're really interested in winning and profiting, I recommend you check that out. It's also at royalflushclub.com. There's a few other websites that I've prepared for you. BetterHold'em.com is a free articles and information website where you'll find all kinds of information and other products and things you can access to boost your game. And finally, PokerTester.com is a new site that I'll be launching in Q1 of 2007. There's an early version of it out there if you want to see it now. PokerTester.com provides a free Texas Hold'em poker test where you can go test your skills. Basically, you answer 25 questions that test 8 different areas of your poker skills, and it'll show you where your knowledge level is good, where your situational analysis in the game is good, and where you've got gaps that you need to work on and fill in order to get better. So if you haven't been there yet or been there lately, check out PokerTester.com. So what we're going to do is go through and analyze a number of different stages of winning Sit and Go tournaments here. It starts with the early stage, and this, is all about getting you started in the game right, getting a feel for the table and the action and the players, starting to understand what type of players you have at your table, and kind of getting your feet on the ground in that tournament. As you progress and a few players start dropping out, you'll end up with 5 or 6 players, and at this stage things get fairly intense, and it becomes sort of a survival of the fittest is the way I like to think of it. So there's certain things we need to do differently in the middle stage in order to survive to the next stage, which is making it into the money. That's where we actually profit by being in the last 3 or 4 remaining at the table, depending on how many tables there are, and you make it into the money. So, if you in a single table tournament, you want to be in the top 3 to be in the money. Of course, ultimately, where you really want to end up is in a heads-up match, so you come in first or second, and obviously, we all want to come in first place. So we'll go through this in several stages. We'll talk about the early game and how to get started right, surviving that middle game shakeout, how to make it into the money into that late stage we talked about, and then how to play heads up in order to win it all. Ultimately, what we want to do at a heads up match is end up being the champion, because the champion walks away with most of the money, and it feels really good to win a tournament. So that's what we'll strive to do. And we're gonna actually do that, and we're gonna watch me doing this online, playing in actual tournament scenarios here. So it's tournament time. Let's sit back, relax, and let's actually go on to the tables. We're going to begin by getting started right with some tournament table action. Welcome to the tournament table. Today we are at a PokerStars tournament table that is a sit-and-go single table tournament with 10 players. And this was a $10 buy-in. I thought it was a common enough level that we would just start there. Now, you know, what I'm going to do is narrate as we go through here. As you can see here, I'm the poker professor over here on the bottom right side, and ID is PokerProf007. What we're going to do is I'm going to narrate through the game as we examine the various aspects of this early game period. Now, I'm not going to bore you with every aspect of the game that I ended up playing, but what I do want to do is show you this cut down version that I've edited down a little bit here, and we'll look at a number of key elements of the game as we progress. At this stage of the game, what I'm typically doing is just watching the other players, getting a sense for how they're playing. Are they playing really crazy? Are they playing rather solid poker, you know, somewhat extra tight? How are they actually playing and carrying on? And it's a good idea to get a sense for who's at your table and what you're up against, and do that fairly early on in the tournament. And you know, at this stage, I'm not in the hand. What I'm doing is I'm watching these other players, and I'm going to watch how many hands they play. I'm going to watch. See, this guy immediately folded. The bad bait guy just folds as soon as a big bet comes at him. So just stick that little piece of information away, and we'll keep watching. Now, you know, 8-2, I don't think I'm going to play that kind of a starting hand, but I will go ahead and check it. Since I'm in the blind, I'll stay in and see what happens, but that's certainly not a starting hand I'm going to start out with. So what we're going to do is tend to play much more tight up front, but when we do play a hand, we're going to play it aggressively. So we're going to go ahead and fold this 8-2. This is not a hand we want to be in on. I'd like to play group 1 hands early on in the tournament, but then occasionally play a surprise hand and mix things up. Blinds are low. We can afford to take some chances. There's very little risk, you know, unless we get kind of crazy and carried away and just, you know, going all in or over betting this early in the tournament. Good. Ace-Jack offsuit. Not a tremendous hand. It's probably a group 2 hand, but a group 2 starting hand is fine. I'm in the blind. You know, why not see the flop and see what happens in any event, right? I'm going to go ahead and just, at this point, you know, I'm actually going to go ahead and raise it, because why not? You got a good strong starting hand, and I might just chase everybody out right away, and that'll be fine. I think that's what happens, yeah. When you bet strong from the blind or generally anywhere, you're going to have a tendency to drive people out of the pot. And if you just call and you sit there and check and call and check and call, that's such weak play. You know, you often see that with beginners. It's not the way you want to play this game. If you do that, you're going to get beaten a lot, because when you're constantly checking and calling, you're signaling that you don't have a strong hand. And what I like to do is tend to, you know, if I check or call, there's a good chance that yeah, I might be wanting to see the flop, but there's also a good chance I might have a really strong hand and I'm underplaying it, and I'm setting you up for a trap. Now this is interesting. So 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm missing the 8. We hit the 8 on the river just for sticking around and going out through the draw. Nobody's betting anything. I'm just going to hang out and see what happens. Now, as it turns out, the 8 didn't fall, so I'm out of here. You know, as soon as I'm not going to try to bluff anybody. No way I'm going to stay in this hand. So I'm done. We're out of there. And I'm still pretty much where I started at 1,500 chips. Look at this now. I'm getting some decent starting hands here. Ace-Jack offsuit again, late position, one off the dealer in the cutoff. So I've got 270 in the pot. It's going to be 120 to call, so I'm going to be getting, reasonably decent pot odds. So I think I'm going to go ahead and stay in this hand here and see what happens. So as it turns out, I flopped an ace, and I've got a good kicker, which I like. I don't like playing just ace crap, ace trash very often, because it'll really get you in trouble, from a kicker perspective, and you get out kicked and you end up in trouble. Now I'm going to raise this up. I'm going to make it painful enough to stay in with me that I can just walk off with this pot or make some more money on it. And in this case, I chased them out, and that's good. They didn't have an opportunity to draw any crap on me and hit me, knock me out on the river or whatever. So I hate it when that happens. Queen King, not a bad starting hand. I'm just going to go ahead and go with the flow here, though. No telling what would happen with King Queen offsuits. That's a little bit marginal. I'm in middle position. It's a little marginal, but look, I flopped the king pair. That's great. It's top pair. And what I don't want is somebody sitting there with an ace, because one of those guys probably has an ace, and we need to be thinking about what they have. I'm going to raise it up again. Once again, I don't want people drawing out on me. They're just sitting there waiting for an ace to flop, for example. So let's see what we think's going on here. So he folds. There's a potential flush on the board. He doesn't know if I've got it. I don't have it at this point, but I do have a shot at it with the Queen of Hearts. Goes all in. At this point, I've got him out kicked. Like I said earlier, be really careful with your kickers. That's why I like playing these Group 1 and Group 2 hands early in the tournament. Those kickers will get you in big trouble. I'm just going to fold this 8-6 offsuit. It's not something I would typically play. When I get a hand like that, I might, in late position, like on the dealer button, I might play a hand like that occasionally just to mix things up. But be very, very occasional. I'd much rather have a suited connector, that sort of play. We've got one player out that I took out, and then now I've got a really good starting hand here, Ace-King. So what do you suppose I'm going to do? I'm early on. I'm going to go ahead and try to drive everybody out, raise it up a little bit, and if anybody stays in with me, the chances are they have a pretty decent hand. So he's calling. He's saying I've got a decent enough hand to stay in with you. What we're going to see here is that we got a good raise. Now that's signaling a really strong hand when you got a re-raise like that, a big raise. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and call. I've got him out chipped, by far, and got a flush draw. There could be a straight out there, so let's see what he does. I've got a shot at the ace-high nut flush. I'm going to go ahead and call it. It's a really questionable call, and he did have the aces. The pocket aces, and fortunately for me, in this case, I drew out on him and got the nut flush. I still would have had 1,650 chips left if I hadn't made that flush draw. So you got to take a few chances, and if you've got the chips to do it, that's the kind of time you want to take a chance and see if you can get out ahead. If not, you're going to be right back kind of at 1,650, about where you started. I wouldn't make that call all the time, but in this case, it worked out for me. In this next section, we're going to talk about the X-Factor system. And this is a system for adjusting your play based upon your stack size and the blinds and the stage of the game that you're in. So the X-Factor system is something that I created as a simple sit-and-go system that beginners and intermediate players can use to sort of as guide rails almost, if you will, that will keep you in the right area, the way you're managing your money, the way that you're playing, and enable you, as you'll see, to make better decisions that will more reliably and consistently get you into the money and into that heads-up position so that you can go for it at the end of the game. It's based on your chip position and the blinds. Now, I didn't completely invent all of this, so what I want to do here is just say that it's been very common for people to look at their stack to pot ratio. And what we mean by that is your current stack size divided by the size of the pot at the beginning of each hand. So once the blinds and any antes, if any, are in the pot, we calculate our stack to pot ratio. And I call this the X factor. And we'll see in a minute why it's called the X factor. But when we have this X factor in mind and we calculate it, we can adjust our play according to some guidelines that I'll give you here in just a moment. So how do we calculate the X factor? Well, we start off by looking at our current stack size, and these are not exact amounts. We estimate our current stack size, which you should always be keeping track of anyway. And then we look at how much money is going into the pot. Now, this is easy to do online because it is displayed for you. You know, if you're in a home game or a regular tournament, you need to be keeping track of that by watching what's in the middle in the pot at all times. But especially when you first start. So that we'll call that the initial pot amount, the amount of the antes and the blinds that are in the pot at the beginning of each hand. So for example, if we are at the stage where we have blinds of 100, 200, and antes of 25, and there's 8 players at the table, so that's 8 times 25 for the antes, there's a total pot of 500 chips. So 100 plus 200 in the blinds plus the antes. Now, if your stack size is 5,000, then your X factor is 10. It's your stack size is 5,000 divided by the 500 that's in the pot. Pretty simple. If your stack size is 3,000, your X factor would be 6, and so forth. So the key here is getting good at just doing this simple division. Sometimes it's easier to just take the size of the pot at the start of the hand and just multiply that out and see where you end up if you're not really good at division. So maybe that's easier for some people. The other thing you can do is just take your current stack size and then divide it by the size of the pot. Now when you're playing online, this is actually even easier because you can use the calc program. Just go to Start menu, hit Run, and type in CALC, and it brings up the Windows calculator. And from there you can just easily type in the size of your stack and the size of the pot and calculate your X factor. And I'll actually do that as a demonstration at some points as we're playing in the game. Again, these are estimates. They're approximations. It's a rule of thumb system. It's not an exact science. So you don't have to be exact. Just get you in the ballpark to get your X factor. Now, I've created this X factor playbook, and what the X factor playbook is a way of giving you guidelines based on what your X is currently as to how you should be thinking about playing. So we have a really big X, like greater than 30. I call this the chip monster, or you're in a position to bully everybody at this point. You can take more risks, you can bluff and steal a lot more, you can use your stack aggressively as long as you don't risk more than about 10x. Okay, so as an example, if I've got an X of 30, I'm not going to want to spend all 30 of that going up against another player who has a really big stack. That would be foolish. So when I want to engage with players who have 10x or less, okay, in case they take me all in. All right? So this is just some things to think about in terms of who you engage and how you play when you're in that chip monster position, because you don't want to lose your chip lead. That could be really devastating. But you can take more risks as long as you're, knowing that you're going up against players where you're not going to risk at all. Now, if you're in the what I call easy street range, your X is greater than 20 but less than 30, you're still in a pretty good position to take some calculated risks, bluff and steal, but use your stack selectively, aggressively. When you come in, you're not going to limp in a lot, you're not going to call a lot, you're going to come in and you're going to raise, you're going to push people around. Not quite as much as when you're the chip monster, but you're not going to be limping around a whole lot unless you're trying to trap somebody. In this case, we don't want to risk more than about 8 to 10 times. Again, we want to keep our X high, and we don't want to take too many big risks. Now, if your X is between 15 to 20, that's probably in the average stack size at this point. You're in reasonably okay shape at the current blind and ante level, but when those blinds and antes go up in a round or two, you may end up in a problem. Okay, so you need to hold out for some better hands here. Run some traps and bluffs where appropriate, but don't risk more than about 5x at this point. And you'll see why in a moment. When you get into the borderline stage of between 8 and 14 on your X, it's time to tighten up, take fewer risks, and protect your stack. You need to wait for better hands to engage. Don't get in a hurry. And make sure you've got the right kind of position against tight players, against the best kind of players when you're going to bluff and steal in this situation. Then finally, the most interesting area, and the toughest one actually to play, is when your X is at 7 or less. So when you're in that 5 to 7 X range, you need to enter what we call push-fold mode. When you go into push-fold mode, what we're basically saying at this point is, if I play a hand, and I've got like a king in the hand, or an ace, and any ace or king in the hand, like a heads-up type hand, or a pair, any pair, I'm all in. I am not going to play around and limp in or raise you. It's like I'm all in because I want to take every possible opportunity to double up, and I want to drive as many people out of the pot. If you don't go all in, you don't have enough chips in the stack, as you try to go incrementally to push anybody out. So this is where, the power in Texas Hold'em is the ability to go all in and to damage some players, okay? So if your X drops below about 5, if it's down to 4 or 5, gosh, that's like just a regular bet of 4 to 5 times a big bet of 4 to 5 times the pot. At that point, you're going to have a much harder time pushing people around, and it's not a place you want to be. So when your X gets in that 5 to 7 range, go into push fold. When you're probably going to end up heads up against a person anyway if somebody calls you. So you want to have a good, strong heads-up hand, and just think like you're in heads-up mode at this point. You're not playing against the whole table. You're playing heads-up, and if you get against 3 players, so much the better. You have the chance of tripling your stack. But we're not going to play many hands, and when we do get something, we're going all in, or we're not going to play at all at this stage. Now it's time to go back for some tournament action. We'll start talking more about this X factor from here on out at the tables. And so it's time for us to go see how we survive the shakeout in the middle game.
Hello and welcome back. We're now in the middle game. As we'll see, the middle game lasts quite a bit longer than the other segments of the game. In fact, it'll go for about 30 minutes. And it actually went about 40 minutes. I've trimmed it back to only 30 minutes so that just to save us some time. But this middle game is really the most critical part of any sit-and-go game, and it's kind of the one where if you get it right, then you'll make it into the end game and into the money and have a shot at actually going heads up. On the other hand, there's a lot that can go wrong during this middle game, so it's an area that can be quite dangerous, and like I said, it's survivist of the fittest at this point, and as we'll see. So at this stage, I'm was fortunate in the last go round to pull at flush, and as you can see right now, I'm not getting any decent starting hands. 3-7, is really not worth much. So we're just going to kind of hang out and wait for a little better hand here. As we talked about in the last little segment, this X factor is something that I use very much in the all aspects of the game, but especially in the middle game. The X factor will be your friend in the middle game and in the end game, as we'll soon see. And so again, calculating X is not that hard, but what we need to be doing right now, since we're not in the hand, we need to be watching the other players, and we need to watch what style play do they have, how aggressive are they. See, this guy on our right here, Mr. Black AA, he just folded to a raise, and that's a good indication he's a solid, maybe tight player. So we just kind of tuck that away and keep that in mind. You got a King 9 starting hand, so that's decent. I'm just going to call it and see what the flop looks like unless somebody raises me. So let's see what we got here. We did get a raise. I'm in the chip lead position. I could do just about anything. At this point, I decided to go ahead and fold it. No reason to engage needlessly. I mean, if he's got pocket aces or pocket kings, there's just no reason, with me being in the chip lead position, to take that kind of risk right now. King 9's not that strong of a starting hand. It was on the cuff there. I could have called it, could have potentially called it, but could have easily lost many hundreds of chips, or even gotten sucked in deeper with that poor starting hand with a bad kicker. So it's best not to call that stuff. The X factor. Just looking around the table right now, we've got blinds of 15-30, so that's 45 in the pot. So 10 times that is 450. 20 times that would be 900. So at this stage of the middle game, everybody is above an X factor of 20. So people can pretty much play fairly freely. Here we've got a very significant raise, which to me is communicating maybe trip threes, possibly a really big, oh, he's got double sevens against kings. Well, I think he kind of overplayed the sevens, don't you? You know, I could understand it if he had, you know, a set of threes, but you know, those sevens, I wouldn't have played that strongly, and obviously it's put him in a difficult position now. Ace-6, it's worth a see. It's worth a look-see. Got to be really careful with that ace low kicker, though. Let's see what we're going to get. Let's see what Mr. Stealth is going to do for us. Everybody folds. Not much help. You know, what the heck. At this point, you know, I don't have much to lose. He's got a pair of fives. You know, I might pull an ace or something. We'll see. No. So, you know, not much to lose. Chip leader position. The guy goes all in with 90 chips. Pair of twos. Well, gosh, some people really like playing these twos strong. I'm not one of them. I've been burned too many times. If I flop a set of twos, it's great, and I'd love to see that. But if I don't flop a set, I'm pretty much going to usually be out of there with those twos. Yeah, and somebody's sitting there with an ace in their hand, most likely. So, you know, any kind of a significant bet, and I'm out of there with the twos. It's just not worth the risk. You got a 1 in 8 chance, possibly, of pulling that set, and if you don't get it on the flop, it's generally best to just fold it and get away from it. Okay, here we go with a pair of fives, like that. A little better than the twos. I probably would normally try to raise this, not too heavily, but, you know, just enough that, you know, these guys will either fold, or in this case they fold, so great. We'll take the pot, and don't have to risk too much with those fives. So we've got a Jack King. Again, looking around, we've got an injured player here who has got 225. He's likely to pop in with all in, just like he's doing just now, at any point in time. Jack King, you know, it's probably worth a call once again. This guy's been playing some fairly weak hands because he's in a difficult position there with his X factor being way below 10. In this case, he's got a pretty decent ace-queen, but he didn't flop the jack like I did. In fact, I've got him covered. He's drawing dead at this point. With he did get his queen, but it wasn't enough. So took out another player and bought myself a few more rounds of blinds, which is good. Being in the chip monster position at this point, have very little to worry about, of course. And I'm not going to play that 3-4. Well, actually, I did call it. Let's see what happens here. So, very dangerous position I'm in right now, unless everybody continues to check. Nobody has anything, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to bluff here, you know, kind of a semi-bluff, since I've got a really weak low pair. Anybody re-raises me, I'm out of there, but as it turns out, I had more than they did, so just easily walked away with that pot. You'll be surprised that as many times as there's some action on the table, if you're the one that bets and leads that action, at least half the time you'll just take the pot right away. Especially if you're at a table with some solid or tight players, just placing a bet automatically puts you out ahead. And it doesn't take much of a bet oftentimes to just pull that pot down right then and there. So don't take the weak play and weak way out and just check it or call it like everybody else is. Throw a feeler bet out there and find out if there's somebody actually has a real hand and they're just trapping.